Well, for more on this and other political stories of the week, we're joined now by Paul Fletcher, Minister for Territories, Local Government and Major Projects. Good morning, Paul. Thanks for coming in today.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Let's speak about the week that was and kick off with gay marriage, as we alluded to in the introduction there. It's seemingly becoming this divisive issue for the Liberal Party. What's your position on it, and do you support Mr Ench's idea of the vote?
Well, look, what we've clearly said is that we arrived at a position when Tony Abbott was Prime Minister, which was that we would take this matter to a plebiscite after the next election. Prime Minister Turnbull has recommitted to that position. So we've got a very clear statement of principle as to the way we will move forward on this. Clearly there are some details to work through, and we'll do that over time, but we've got a clear statement of principle. We'll take this to the Australian people in a plebiscite. As Christopher Pyne said earlier this week, clearly when you take something like this to the people in a plebiscite, it's then your clear intention to give effect to the outcome of the plebiscite, because there's been some questioning about that, but just to be absolutely clear, the outcome of the plebiscite will be respected and implemented by the government. There are some mechanics to work through, and we'll do that. Look, Warren Ench, as with any backbencher, is absolutely free to put forward his proposal as to the mechanics, but we do need to work through the details.
Do you support marriage equality and gay marriage?
Well, look, what I support is the Liberal Party's position, announced by Tony Abbott, confirmed by Malcolm Turnbull, that we will take this to the Australian people in a plebiscite. And as Prime Minister Turnbull said in question time this week, he has a high degree of confidence in the capacity of the Australian people to have a mature and respectful debate about this very important issue.
Is it an issue that your constituents raise with you? Do they regard it as important?
Look, the issue gets raised with me by some constituents. I think every MP would say that this is an issue that gets raised by some constituents. But constituents raise a whole range of issues with MPs, and clearly the Turnbull government is very focused on Australia's economic security, being an innovative, agile, creative nation, as Prime Minister Turnbull has said, capitalising on the opportunities with technology and the fastest rate of economic change than we've really seen. And the Turnbull government is a very confident government about the prospects of Australia capitalising on those opportunities. That's a real focus on us, for us. You've seen a big focus from Prime Minister Turnbull on innovation, and that really extends across a whole range of portfolios.
Well, given the change of leader, there has been some expectation that policy will change. That hasn't happened as yet. Is it your expectation that you will continue until the next election without a change to those policies, such as gay marriage? Also, the climate change and how you'll approach that?
Well, I think what I'd say is you've seen a range of areas where the Turnbull government is laying out clear directions. So this week we had Prime Minister Turnbull together with the Treasurer and the Assistant Treasurer laying out a response to the financial system inquiry. For example, measures announced in relation to reducing surcharges on credit cards and other cards so that they must relate to actual cost levels incurred rather than being a means for, frankly, unreasonably high charges to be imposed on consumers. So across a range of areas you're seeing a clear approach from the Turnbull government. The Prime Minister has signalled that we are going to have some clear policy measures in relation to innovation over coming months, but at the same time we're also getting on with the job and taking forward a very considerable agenda. For example, in relation to infrastructure, this week we saw the announcement of the Western Sydney Airport environmental impact statement and draft airport plan. Now that's a very important piece of infrastructure for Western Sydney, for Sydney and for the nation. So there's work well underway, and we are continuing that work in a whole range of areas.
Well, Minister, let's talk about that. You just mentioned the Western Sydney Airport Plan was released this week, and everyone, it's on public exhibition until, I believe, around mid-December.
18th of December.
There have been suggestions that people flying in and out of Sydney Airport are going to have to subsidise, if you like, the cost of the building at Badgerys Creek of the airport, $10 each time they fly. Would you support this?
What we have made clear is that the government is engaged in discussions commercial discussions with interested parties, in particular the owners of the existing Sydney Airport, the Southern Cross Airport Corporation, have what's called a right of first refusal. So we've been in constructive commercial discussions with that company for some months, and those will continue. But in that context, it's not really appropriate for ministers to be disclosing the details of commercial discussions. What we need to make sure of is that we get the best possible outcome for taxpayers, because there's a lot of money being spent on this project, and of course for the people who will use the airport and for the people of Western Sydney, because this is going to be a vital piece of economic infrastructure and very important in generating jobs and economic activity.
Well, indeed. I mean, this comes into your remit as Minister for Major Projects. That's one. What do you regard as a major project?
Well,
is it all a part of nation building? So obviously Western Sydney is one example.
The government has a significant range of infrastructure projects underway around the country. There's a $50 billion infrastructure package in New South Wales. That's projects like the upgrading of the Pacific Highway, $5.6 billion, so it'll be 4 lanes all the way from Sydney up to the Queensland border. In Queensland, that's $6.7 billion of commitment to upgrading the Bruce Highway, various projects along that vital artery from Brisbane all the way up to Cairns. In WA, we're working with the WA government on projects like Perth Freight Link. In South Australia, for example, just this week I announced with the South Australian Transport and Infrastructure Minister Stephen Mulligan, the Northern Connector. That's a $985 million project, 15 kilometres of freeway, and we announced going to expressions of interest on that project. So around the country there's a whole range of infrastructure projects. These are designed to stimulate economic growth but also create vital productivity enhancing infrastructure. Let me give you one example. On the Pacific Highway, the upgrade work that's already been done reduces the travel time by about an hour and a half. About 60% of the work's been done. When we do the remaining 40%, that will add another hour in saved travel time. That's a 2.5 hour travel time reduction. Now the productivity benefits for that, when you think of the trucks going up and down that highway, delivering goods, are enormous.
Also safety too, obviously.
Safety is enormously important.
All right. Paul Fletcher, we'll have to leave there. Thanks so much for coming with.
Thanks very much.
Minister.